Well, I'm the son of an immigrant, and I care about what happens to the refugees, and I actually agree with Germany about the refugee crisis, that there should be quotas for the Europeans to let in refugees. And a lot of people aren't going to like this. But, from what I've seen in America, some of the greatest talent we have here are immigrants. And that's the side of the story that, the separatists, the Republicans, and other people do not want to bring up. You have to excuse my breathing heavy. I just did the first martial art combo, with both my hands since I injured my finger in 11 days. Actually 12 days. It was back on the, it was on the 10th at nighttime when I cut my finger. Or it was right about to get dark. It was like 4 or 5 or something. So, I think America is very hypocritical when it comes to this immigration issue. I myself, like I stated back in 2012, during a very controversial time where I was making videos about, which people can fight the best, because I was very angry about prison gang wars and so on and so forth. And perhaps I was wrong to make those videos. In fact, I was wrong to make those videos. And, I guess, I don't like to apologize, but I apologize. Now, when this immigration issue, America will take immigrants and pay them little to work in the fields and on the farms. And, there's human trafficking being done at the top level of society. And, when it comes to, Republicans and their farms, they're not complaining about immigration. It's very hypocritical, It's very inhumane. It's saying what you can do for us, in that case, we'll turn a blind eye to it. For them, it isn't really about right and wrong. It's about interest. What's in their best interest? And, that has always put me at odds with a lot of movements, a lot of people, a lot of politicians, because I do what I think is right. I say what I think is right. And, as you can imagine, I take a lot of heat for it as uncontrolled opposition. So, me is one of the places I disagree with a lot of these guys, talking about building walls and stuff, so on and so forth. In my personal opinion, if you have a fair process to allow people to emigrate, to this country, to immigrate to this country, to immigrate from their country and immigrate into this country, then it really doesn't matter if you have a wall or not, But we do not have that process. And you could say, well, how did your father do it? Well, he married somebody who is American. I think that has something to do with it, And that shouldn't be a prerequisite for being allowed to be here. I think if you have, if your policies keep you from recruiting the best and the brightest from around the world, then you're going to be overtaken by those whose policy allows for that to happen. And then we split families apart. How insane is that? Can you imagine? You have your parents, and they're sent back to their country of origin, or whatever you want to call it. And how fair is that? Well, it's not very fair at all, is it? It's just another way they break down your family. And you all know how I feel about people who break down the family. They did a study, I believe, I think it was like 2012 or so, maybe it was 2009, I forgot, where they said 80% of all prisoners come from a single-parent home. It's great for the prison industrial complex the Republicans are teamed up with to deport people, because that increases the chances exponentially, perhaps, for, their offspring to wind up in prison, where they can learn racial animosity, hatred, and extreme violence. And then when they try to come back into society, even if they wish to change, how much of a chance do we really give them to change? They're at the mercy of the same predatory system that set them up to go to prison in the first place. So, you know, am I supposed to ignore my brown brothers, my Asian brothers, my brothers from all over the world, and their pain, in order to make people feel good, feel American, in order for people to think that, he's a true American, No. I do what's right, and whether or not I'm being stabbed in the back by the groups that I'm helping, I do what's right. A lot of people can't understand that. So, my personal opinion, is that we need to have a more immigrant-friendly policy. When it comes, and then there's a lot of other issues that go into it that I'm not even gonna, explore too much. Such as, well, isn't this a land of immigrants in the first place? Isn't that the worst form of hypocrisy? Being an immigrant who came here in the last, 400 years or so, or less. In many cases, in many white Americans' cases, less. My family came here on the Mayflower, on my mom's side, but that doesn't make it my land. We came here on the Mayflower, and the white colonists and settlers ripped off the people whose land it really was. And so when all was said and done, it became white America. Now it's 76% white. The legal citizens here, that is. But how did it get that way? On my mother's side, a lot of people knew William Penn. They basically bankrupted themselves, giving away land in Pennsylvania. And I wonder if they knew that this is how things would be if they would have done the same. My relative, Daniel Boone, distant relative, relative from a long time ago, he teamed up with Native Americans in some cases. He stood up for them. He was accepted as one of their brothers. But because of the American Revolution and being a man who does what he thinks is right, no matter who it offends, he decided to go against them. And so some of these natives fought on the British side. And can you really blame them? I mean, there was no good guy, and they just did what was in their best interest. A lot of you are going to hold that against me, But in the end, hasn't America shown that we were just as bad as the British when it comes to exploiting and turning a blind eye? Remember, not to act is as much of an act as to act. So those of you who sit there and say, well, Americans didn't actively kill Native Americans. You think they didn't catch wind of disease spreading? You think they had no idea that they brought the disease with them and they just happened to have the same symptoms as diseases that are commonly found in Europe? They could have done a lot more containment. They could have done a lot more treatment. They could have done a lot more prevention and intervention, but they did not. Okay, it's that indifference. It is all that indifference. It has to do with morality, scruples, values, principles, ethics. If you're going to start screaming about, well, they come here illegally and this and that, is the major problem that it is unlawful? Laws change. It is the morality behind the law that should be the problem. And if morality is the issue, then where is the morality in breaking down families? It's hard enough for a family to make it in this society where most people are in debt to an unjust, unbalanced, unscrupulous system run by bad people. But then you want to break down the family, and you wonder why people feel the need to fight for respect. You wonder why people feel the need to steal and sell drugs. And then they exacerbate the problem. They feed into the cycle of poverty and despair, hopelessness, moral depravity. You're breaking down the moral fabric of society. Your indifference created a system of oppression, and any political activism is repressed. And then you turn around and say, we're going to close our borders to these people. Now, what you're really saying to Americans who are citizens and otherwise is we are going to close the border to your families, to your people. And what are we going to give you in exchange? Indifference, hypocrisy, unfairness, backstabbing, betrayal. So, how I feel about injustice, it should be very obvious to you. How I feel about people who do double talk and who trick and do propaganda, and, it's absolutely despicable. Have you ever seen an immigrant come into a foreign land unsure of themselves? I mean, it's hard enough to go to a foreign nation, but imagine knowing that you're stigmatized ahead of time. Imagine not speaking the language and no one wants to help you because they're a bunch of cocky, pompous, pretentious filth. And now imagine being shy while that happens. See, when you're shy, and many people are shy, oh man, it's pain. And you're probably more likely to end up being very extroverted eventually with all that pain and hatred that is building up. Shy people die when they try to immigrate, in many cases. So, how do we treat people in the land of the free and the home of the brave? How do we treat people? We break down their families. We drug them if we don't approve of their behavior. We teach fear and division. We turn ethnic groups against mainstream society, and then we turn around and blame them for it. We turn individuals against society. We promote greed, selfishness, materialism, cowardice, conformity. This pluralistic society, this multicultural society, but yet it is a society that demands conformity. Even my behavior. I have to present myself a certain way that mainstream society approves of, just to get my message out. Or else I will be helping them justify persecuting me for my political views. So they're persecuting me for my behavior, my culture, and my political views all at once. Why? Because they're evil. I mean, to keep it simple, because they're bad people. Bad people do bad things. And when they do it, you shouldn't be surprised. And you see all these people who have this fear and greed, they're afraid. They think that, well, if we let these people in, they're going to take our jobs and so on and so forth. Well, instead of focusing on fighting over crumbs with people, you need to focus on creating more cake for everyone. Invest in the different sectors of society. Make them more efficient. Make them more fair. Make them more conducive. If a nation has a low unemployment rate, that's more tax money being brought back to the system. More consumerism, more purchasing, more taxes, sales taxes. That's how the system works. Goods and services, the exchange of goods and services. But because we have this very ineffective, inefficient system, you have undocumented immigrants not paying taxes because the same Republicans who cry about their presence are exploiting their labor and not giving back to the system. And so the system is like clogged and jammed. And I want to put some oil and help it work and fix it and repair it so it's to get the wheels turning again. And so no one's fighting for crumbs, but we're all living well. We're all happy. All is good in the neighborhood. But the people in charge, they don't want me to do that because they are satanic filth.